Okay. Okay, great, everybody. Welcome back to class. Good morning. Now that it's 8:30, I'm just getting our meeting started up. Good to be with you guys as usual. Hope you had a great weekend and having a nice week so far to get things going week 2. Feel free, if you could, just to say hello, good morning, or anything like that in the chat, or otherwise, just like to sort of touch base with you guys. Okay, so hey there, Brandon, Sheridan, Sabrina, Joseph, Saida, Leela, Sebastian, Ricardo, Caitlin, Timothy, Angel, Noemi, Megan, Vanessa, Daniela, Michael, Audrey, Jesus, Avery, Amy, Lindsay, Jonathan, Joanna. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you guys. I'm doing pretty well. Just kind of getting back into the flow of classes, but I had a good, relaxing weekend. The workload is not too bad yet for me, so I guess I can't complain just now, so it's all good. So welcome back, everyone. Let's go ahead and return to our class notes and the lecture material. First thing I want to do today is just kind of to recap some of the major information that we went over in the previous week's meeting on Thursday. And then once we just quickly summarize and review some of that, I have some more interesting new notes for you to expand on the topic of logical argument. And we're going to learn a little bit about the two major forms of argument and reasoning, which are deduction and induction. So that's the main plan for today, to really talk about deduction and induction. But we have a little bit of work first to just go back over some of our previous notes. So I guess you guys obviously were able to find the meeting today. That's why you're here, so that's good. Notice that I did mail out the recording of the lecture from last Thursday as well, so you can view it if you ever want to by clicking on the video that I sent. I have a separate YouTube channel that I use to record these lectures. It's running at the same time as the Zoom, and so that's what I'm using to basically capture the recorded video and then send you back those few lectures. We only have a couple of these virtual lectures to start the semester, today and then one more on Thursday. Next week, of course, we will be in person, so it'll be great to see you guys there in the classroom. But until then, yeah, I'm just posting videos of the few lectures that we have. When I've been online for the whole semester, that's the way I've operated, just post videos after the lecture. But yeah, so we're all good to go. Okay, then, so I'm just going to ask a few quick questions about definitions and topics from the last meeting. And anybody who knows the answer or thinks they have a reasonable response, feel free to just leave that comment in the chat or however you want to interact, whether that's through the microphone or otherwise. So question, what did we think or say was a good critical thinker? What exactly is that? A good critical thinker, someone should know. So let's start with that. It'll take a moment maybe to collect your thoughts, look at your notes, or just use your memory. But I know it's there, the information's there, so something you can retrieve. It's a certain type of person, but what type of person is it that's a good critical thinker? It's a person that, what? Go ahead and let me know. The definition, I'm not asking for an example, but what kind of person is a good critical thinker? Okay, Daniela, a person that would not believe a claim unless it is supported by good evidence or good arguments. Exactly. So a good critical thinker is not going to believe information that is reported or told to them unless they can see that it is supported by good evidence or arguments. But there's one other part of it too. That's fundamental, yes. But I also mentioned that what's the other part? Anybody know? When the good critical thinker makes arguments or claims, I should say claims, then what? Go ahead, guys. Just get it out there. Go ahead. Yes?
Where they provide evidence or arguments to support their claim.
That's right. Okay, good. You're correct. So let's just make sure that's fundamental. It's a basic concept in our class. It's all about critical thinking. So critical thinkers, good critical thinkers, are those people of the world who don't believe claims unless it's supported by good evidence or arguments. So they don't believe things for just no good reason, like just because somebody said so or just because it sounds interesting. They need to hear that there's good reasonable evidence behind it, and then they might be willing to agree. And at the same time, a good critical thinker, when they make claims to other people, they can back those claims up. They don't just say things that they have no reasonable defense for, but they can actually provide the evidence or arguments to back up and support their claims. So critical thinkers are those that are good at both evaluating the quality of a person's argument and also they're capable of presenting high quality arguments to bolster, defend, justify the claims that they make. On the other hand, bad critical thinkers, and I'm sure you guys know this, are just the opposite. So those are folks that will believe claims that are not based on any kind of good argument or evidence. And those are the sort of people who make claims boldly to other people without proof that they cannot defend. So we just want to be the better critical thinkers in this world rather than the worst. And we can all make progress towards that goal. We talked about different types or individuals of people that might satisfy either definition. So some of you guys mentioned like lawyers, professors, scientists, researchers, medical doctors, and so on and so forth, judges, you know, a whole range of people who we believe, generally speaking, form their beliefs based on good, reasonable evidence, but not otherwise, and are also capable of providing the reasonable evidence in support of their claims. And then we talked about examples of bad critical thinkers. I don't know, children, you know, at a very young age, maybe some people that are highly set in their ways and resistant to changing their views, maybe people that only take their information from like-minded sources and refuse to consider alternatives. I don't know, anti-science people, people that are in cults, religious fanatics, and all kinds of things like that. So we're trying to be the best critical thinkers that we can be. And part of that means that we have to start thinking about what arguments are and how to analyze them and how to present them. So that's the next thing I'd like to just ask anyone to tell me. What is an argument in the formal sense as defined by logic? It's a set of things, but what are these things and how many of them are there and what are the parts and all that? So let me know. What is the definition of an argument? Okay, very good, Caitlin. It is a set of two or more sentences where one of the sentences is the conclusion. There's a little extra piece of info. Yes, that's all correct, but there's something extra. It's a set of two or more sentences where one of the sentences is the conclusion, but what are the other sentences? Premises, very good, yes. So within every argument, you have at least two sentences because there has to be a combination of conclusion with at least one premise. Like, I don't know, for example, John is taller than Bill. Bill is taller than Melissa. So let me just see if anybody can deduce this conclusion. John's taller than Bill. Bill's taller than Melissa. What follows from that in the conclusion? There's something that follows from those. Just asking you to try and use a little logic and reason your way towards the conclusion. Let me know if anyone can spot the conclusion, and then I'll put it on the board. Go ahead, just get it in there. John is taller than Melissa? Yes, very good. Bill is tall. No, Megan. I mean, we don't even know that any of these people are tall. Taller than is the claim. So you could have three toddlers, one of which is like 3 years old, one is 2, and one is 1 year old. So it's not necessarily that Bill is tall. But yes, it is that John is taller than Melissa. You say John is the tallest and Melissa is the shortest, sure. But that's also, I guess, implied. But Timothy, you knocked it out of the park. Same with you, Jonathan. So that would be our conclusion in this case. Okay, so John's taller than Melissa is a conclusion here. Now, this is a conclusion. There's two premises that are given in support of the conclusion. And this structure that you're looking at is what is called standard form. Standard form is the way that you're supposed to like write down or type out the argument. The conclusion goes where? At the bottom, so it's always the end. And then the premises are listed above. It's sometimes helpful to number them so that you can see that they're distinct from each other. And then a horizontal line will often separate the listed premises from the conclusion. So within every argument, there's at minimum one premise, but there can be more, and there's always exactly one conclusion. Here's a question, just to see if we're all following the info. If I told you that Cal State Fullerton is the best college, Is that an argument? Just saying Cal State Fullerton is the best college. It's not an argument, no, but why not? What's the problem with the statement or whatever? Why does it not count as an argument? Correct. There's no premises. It's just one claim, and there's no evidence given in support of it. Now, could a person make an argument that has that conclusion? Sure. You could give reasons, and then in that case, you'd have a real argument. You could say, well, we have one of the highest rates of graduation for underrepresented people. We have one of the most diverse campuses. We have an ideal coastal location in Southern California. Therefore, Cal State Fullerton is the best college. But you would have to at least offer some reasons. Otherwise, you make a claim without providing support, and therefore it's not considered an argument in the formal sense. Now, notice this, that when we talk about arguments and logic, they're good things. It's good to try and justify a claim by presenting premises, or in other words, evidence for it. In everyday life, sometimes when you hear the word argument, it occurs with a negative connotation, like, oh, people shouldn't get into arguments, because you think of it as people fighting, being nasty to each other, maybe insulting. But although that's sometimes how people act, like, in social media, Twitter, and in some cases in everyday life, in logic and in critical thinking, we consider arguments just to be these formal structures where there's a set of premises leading to a conclusion. And arguments don't necessarily even involve two people. Sometimes you might just be considering the argument on your own, just to try and analyze it and think about it as a single person. So let's just make sure that we're clear on that. The word argument is to be understood in our class in the sort of formal sense of logic, not in the informal sense of people being upset with each other. Okay, so next thing is this. I just want to review a couple more terms from last meeting to make sure it's not lost, because after the weekend, sometimes you need to have your memory revived a little bit. So question, the whole point of these arguments is to show that the conclusion is what? You make the argument in order to try and justify, support, or prove that the conclusion is what? Question. Whole point of this is to show that it's true. To show that the conclusion is true is the basis for making the argument or for stating the argument. Now I've got a new question though. What does it mean when a sentence is true? What does it mean for a sentence to be true? We talked about truth in the previous meeting. So let me hear that if anybody can remember. To be true, what does that require for a sentence? It matches the facts. Very good. Yes, it matches what's real in reality. So if I told you that, I don't know, there's a marker on this table, that's just true. I mean, there it is. That's the fact. If I told you that there's a dog on this table, it's clearly false. I mean, I could say that. You could say anything, but I would be saying something false, because that's not what the facts really are. So statements, when they match the facts, they're true statements. And statements, when they don't match those same facts, then they're just false. So telling you that I'm 7 foot tall is just false. I'm not. That's not the facts. Telling you that I'm like whatever, 5'9", I guess, 5'10", that is a fact. So maybe it's 5'9.5". It's been a while since I've actually measured, but it's around there. So yeah, that would be a fact. That'd be a true statement about me. Okay, so it's important to know that the whole game and goal of argument and logic is to come up with true beliefs, which takes us to another question. What does it mean to have a belief in something? To believe a sentence means what? That's sort of related to truth, but it's a slightly different concept. So to say that somebody believes a sentence, what does that mean about that person? They think the sentence is true. Yes, correct. So believing a sentence is you thinking that it's true. And there's obviously this interesting difference between belief and truth. Truth is objective. So even if a person doesn't believe something that's true, it still is true. Even if somebody doesn't believe that the Earth is round, it is round, and that's just a fact. But beliefs themselves could be subjective to the individual, and of course, people can disagree about their beliefs. You can have one person who says, "I say this Earth is flat," another person who says, "I don't believe that at all. I think it's round." And these two people don't have the same view about what's true, about the fact, right? But there's only one fact. There's only one world, and there's only one shape of the planet. So when people have different beliefs, they can't all be correct. If one person believes that their partner is cheating and then their best friend doesn't believe that, they cannot both be correct, because it can't be that they both are and are not. So Beliefs are your subjective viewpoint on what the truth is regarding a claim. And so when you agree with a claim and think it's true, that means you believe it. I don't know, just to take another example, many people believe in God, that God exists, but then there are some people that don't believe God exists. And so given the statement, there's a God, there are folks, most of them, I guess, that say, yes, that's true, and I believe so. And then there are other people who say, I don't think that's really real, so they don't believe it's true. So anyway, I'm just giving you examples of beliefs. They can be attached to everyday things, very big pie in the sky concepts like religion, all the way down to like political beliefs, moral beliefs, and just beliefs about basic matters of fact. Like, is my package here? I believe it's there because I got a notification on my phone. Then you get home, it's not there. It changes your belief. Okay, next. So I think we also talked about what are called conclusion indicator words, right? So when you reach the conclusion in an argument, you get to that bottom line, there's a word or certain words that are often stated just before you assert the final statement. And so what are some of these conclusion indicator words? Words that indicate, hey, here's the conclusion of an argument, or this is the result of the reasoning. All right, good, Angelica. Therefore, so, thus, hence, consequently. A couple of others I can think of. It follows that. Perhaps the old-fashioned ergo or QED. But that's a good sampling of the main options there, Angelica. Yes. Therefore probably is the most classically known. John is taller than Bill. Bill is taller than Melissa. So therefore, thus, hence, so, John is taller than Melissa. Good. There are also some premise indicator words. If anyone can tell me some of them, that'd be good. So words which indicate that the next statement following or whatever is a premise in an argument. So evidence words. Yes, you've got words like because. There's also included in that mix since. Yes, given that is another one. On account of, due to the fact that. Yes, those are all good and proper examples. Correct. So given that John is taller than Bill, and since Bill is taller than Melissa, consequently, John is taller than Melissa. All right, good. So just getting us in the habit of knowing how to use these words and in what way they're utilized. I think the only other thing really that we talked about then was, well, maybe just one or two things, that there are different types of sentences in our language and just in language in general. So one main type of sentence are what we call assertoric sentences. And does anybody remember what those are? The assertion sentences? These are sentences that, what? Assertoric declarative sentences. Means what? It is a sentence that is either true or false. That's right. And that's the sort of main concept of sentences that we want to be familiar with in this class, because assertions, declarative sentences, are the only ones that appear as premises and conclusions in arguments. So yes. There's also interrogatives. But wait, before I move on too quickly. So like, for example, certain assertions, the sun is hot. Canada is to the north of the United States. These are two assertions. They're both facts. I guess I could also say false things. The sun is cold. Canada is to the south of the United States. Those would also be assertions, but they would just be false because they're not true. Okay, now, what is an interrogative sentence? What kind of sentence is that? Let me know when you've got that piece of info for me. That's all it is. Life, really, a lot of things in school and professional life, it's just finding info and providing it to the right source. So questions, that's right. Any sentence that ends with a question mark is an interrogative. Even if I ask you, what is an interrogative? That is an interrogative, kind of funny little meta example, because it's a question, even though it's a question about what type of sentence it is. Okay, how about imperatives? Anybody? Imperatives? What kind of sentence are those? They are commands, right? If I told you, write down an imperative, what kind of sentence would that be? It would be a command. It would be an imperative itself. So commands like take out the trash, stop that, leave me alone, go away, hold my drink. whatever. These are all just commands, and they have a different logical role than either assertions or interrogatives. Finally, there are exclamations, which are just momentary expressions of feeling, things like whoa, boo, yay, and things of that kind. So they don't even have like a full grammatical structure, but they reveal the psychological state of the speaker at the time. Okay, so that's our review of last week's meeting material, and now we can move on. I guess the only other last thing I did say at the time on Thursday was that there's a difference between arguments and a set of sentences where there's no inference. So you just got to make sure that for it to really be an argument, there is at least some claim that is based on evidence in the statements that are used. If I just told you I have 2 cats and I teach philosophy, that's not an argument. Those are just 2 true statements, but neither one is evidence for the other. So the key is that there always has to be like the term therefore, thus, hence, so, something like that for it to really qualify as an argument rather than just a random selection of statements, whether they be true or false. Okay, so then that takes us to today. Today, the main goal is to try and learn more about argument by learning about the 2 major forms of argument and forms of reasoning. So there are 2 main types of argument in logic. Two main types of argument or reasoning. Okay, and what those are deduction versus induction. Okay, so you see it there on the board. I'm going to also make sure it's in the chat one time. So okay, there you go. So 2 main types of argument, deduction and induction. We'll start off by learning about the deductive type of arguments, all right? Now, when a deductive argument is what we would call a good deductive argument, then it has the status we call deductively valid, all right? So we now need to all be clear and learn what it means for an argument to be deductively valid. Okay. Okay, so let me provide you this definition of a deductively valid argument, and then we will talk about examples and really try to get it as clear as we can. So a deductively valid argument is this kind of argument. It's an argument where if all of the premises are true, then in that case, if all the premises are true, then the conclusion must necessarily be true also. Okay, so there we go. If all of the premises are true, then the conclusion must be true also. Okay, so key points in the definition: if all the premises are true, then in that case, the conclusion must also be true. Okay, let me put that in the chat as well. Okay, there you go. Deductively valid argument. So if all of the premises are true, then the conclusion must be true also. And I emphasized and sort of capitalized the word must because that's the key to deductive validity. When you have a deductively valid argument, the truth of the premises guarantees that the conclusion is true. Not just that it's probably true or maybe true, but that it literally would have to be true necessarily in case those premises were. Now, I'll clear the board of this since it's in the chat. And let's go ahead and think of some examples now. So, so for example, all dogs are mammals. Golden Retriever is a dog. I'll say a Golden Retriever is a dog. So what's the conclusion that follows from those statements? All dogs are mammals. A Golden Retriever is a dog. Therefore, simple enough, can you deduce a little elementary logic for me? The conclusion, let's see in the chat. What follows? There's something that's clearly a logical consequence of these two statements. And it's just pretty simple. What do you think it is? All the dogs are mammals, and a Golden Retriever is a dog. So, therefore, what? Golden Retriever is a mammal. Perfect, yes. Okay, so is this argument valid? Yes, this is a valid argument. Why? Because if these two statements are true, does this have to be true? Yes. Because what they say is that all the dogs are mammals. So if all of them are, 100% of dogs fit into the category of mammal, then any specific breed or subcategory of these dogs is going to be a mammal as well. As a way of trying to diagram this, to show its validity in a sort of graphical way, let us say that this circle here stands for dogs. So I'm labeling it with letter D, okay? Now, if I'm going to draw another circle in relationship to this one that says D, to reflect the first premise that all dogs are mammals, where should this second circle go? The one that represents mammals. We'll draw another circle labeled M for mammals, but where will it appear visually in connection to this D circle if all of the dogs are mammals? Let me ask you that. Where should I draw? Just tell me where to draw another circle with the letter M in it to represent this premise. Would it overlap, you say, Amy? Well, okay, let me pursue your question. If it was just like a Venn diagram like this, that wouldn't be the right picture because, say, these are mammals, these are dogs, then this would mean that there are some dogs that are not mammals because it's falling outside of the intersection of the two circles. So it's not just a partial overlap. It is, as I think Joanna has said, that M is going to surround the circle D. Why? Because this reflects that all dogs are mammals. You see, in this outside region, which lies outside of the circle D, we have the mammals that are not dogs, cats, tigers, bears, human beings. But this is the subcategory of mammals, the subset of them, that are all the dogs. Okay, so new question. To state the second premise on this graph, where will I put the letters GR for Golden Retriever? Like, where will the Golden Retriever circle go now? In what part of the graph or diagram? We have to also now add that new element inside the dog circle, right? And so let us just put that here. Golden Retriever, not the best writing, pardon me. Just working with a little bit of physical limitations here. So anyway, that's GR. Notice now that the conclusion has to be true, doesn't it? Because if all the dogs are mammals, so 100% of these dogs are mammals, and then if we have one thing that is a type of dog, of course it's a subcategory of dogs, then obviously this thing, the Golden Retriever, is contained within the larger set of things that contains the dogs themselves. So yes, the conclusion logically follows from the premises. Therefore, it's a deductively valid argument. Okay? Let's just try and multiply examples to get really a good feel for how this validity concept works. Okay, so how about this? No man has walked on Mars. No man has walked on Mars. Somebody give me the name of a human being that is familiar to all of us. Just anybody in the world, but a real person. Beyonce. Okay, fine. Maybe just to eliminate the ambiguity with the terminology of man, I meant it in the sense of human, but if we're going to go with a female, I don't want it to be confusing to anybody. So let's say no human has walked on Mars. Beyonce, y'all know Beyonce, is a human. So what's the logical conclusion of this valid argument? No human being has walked on Mars. Beyonce is a human, and therefore, what follows? Just let me know. Therefore, Beyonce has not walked on Mars, correct? Okay, it's a valid argument, isn't it? It's another valid argument. And just to make it, clear, let's go through the whole process of trying to diagram the logic on the board. So I'm drawing one circle here, lettering it with H to stand for human beings. So every human being that ever has lived is in that circle. Me, you, President Biden, whatever, Tom Brady, Kanye West, everybody, they're all in there. Okay. Now I'm going to draw another circle that's just going to be labeled M. And it's going to stand for people that have walked on Mars. Okay. So where should that one go? The M circle that stands for all the people who have walked on Mars. If no human has walked on Mars, then there's a human circle, and the M circle for beings that have walked on Mars should be where? Spatially positioned in connection to this one. Because remember, no humans walked on Mars. So the things that have walked on Mars are labeled M. Where will that circle go? Just have to reason a little bit, but just tell me when you've got it, where that M circle will be placed on the board. What do you say? I know you can do it. No, I hear one direct message saying inside the circle, but that's not true because no human has ever walked on Mars. So if M was inside of the circle, it would mean that there's a small number of humans that have walked on Mars. Okay, so Joseph, you say on the outside or away from the circle. Yes, they're disjoint because there's not even one human that has walked on Mars. Now, if there had been one or a couple, there might be a little overlap, but it's never happened at all. So no human has walked on Mars. Now, Beyonce is a human being. Where shall I put the letter B to stand for Beyonce? Let me know that one. Where's B go? Inside of the circle for H. That's right, because she is one of those humans. Okay? So doesn't it follow that Beyonce has not walked on Mars? Clearly so, because there's no human that has walked on Mars. So every being that's inside of this circle is outside of this disjointed other circle where they don't intersect. Okay, so yet again, we have a valid argument. In these valid arguments, there's no possibility for the conclusion to be false if the premises are all true. So given that these two things are true, that has to be true. Okay, let's try another example. So, first premise, most birds can fly. Penguins are birds. Therefore, penguins can fly. Is this argument valid or invalid? That's the question. Is it a valid argument or no? It's not valid. Good. And let's understand why it's not valid. Why isn't it valid? Because the first premise says what portion of birds can fly. It says most of them can. Fair enough. Penguins are birds. Also true. But it doesn't say all. And that's right, Maya. It doesn't say all. So Just because most birds can fly and penguins are birds, it does not imply that penguins can fly. This can be false even if these two statements are true. That's why it's an invalid argument. As an example, most birds can fly. Okay, here are birds. And things that can fly. Let's call that letter F here. So most of the birds can fly. And you have some things that can fly that are not birds, insects, airplanes, whatever, drones. But only most birds can fly, not all of them. That's why the letter F circle does not completely contain B. Now, penguins are birds. Where would this letter P go in the circle representing birds? The letter P should go in what position? Standing for penguins. In between? No, that's not correct. Sorry, Joseph, not in between, because if it was here, that would be within the set of flying things. So in the circle, but not in the part that overlaps. That is right. It's in the bird circle, yes, Noemi, but you have to provide that little extra detail that it's in this unshaded region of it, because these are the non-flying birds, the flightless birds. There's penguins, there's ostriches, emus. Okay, there's a couple of examples. So noticing that most birds can fly, that's represented up here. Showing that penguins are birds, that's represented here. But notice that it doesn't follow that penguins can fly because we have them outside of the scope of the set of things that are flying things. So that's an invalid argument. Okay. Now, let's see. Just going to try and work with a few other examples here. I'll put this on the board just because it is such a classic example that is that's rooted deeply in ancient writings on logic. It goes all the way back to Aristotle and the ancient Greeks. So it would be a problem if I didn't at least mention it a few times or once. All men are mortal. All men are mortal. Socrates, the great Greek philosopher of the ancient world, is a man. So now that we've warmed up a little bit, maybe you can just hit me with the conclusion to this. Pretty straightforward. All men are mortal, meaning they live and die, finite lifespan. Socrates is a man, therefore, yes, Socrates is mortal. Good. Okay, so for men, I'm going to again go with the letter H for human. So here's humans. They're all of them mortal, okay? But there are, of course, mortal beings that are beyond just a set of humans. They're all the other non-human animals and stuff. So anyway, all human beings are mortal. Socrates is a human, and therefore Socrates is mortal. The conclusion is a logical consequence of the premises. So in all the examples I've given you here, it's just impossible for the conclusion to be false if the premises are actually true, except for the one example of the invalid argument we just gave. Wanted you to see the difference between validity and invalidity. In the case I gave before about being taller than, that was also valid, because if John is taller than Bill and Bill is taller than Melissa, just to put on the board again, it does then follow, logically, it's valid, that John is taller than Melissa. And that can easily be shown, because if this is, say, the height of John, okay, and we know that he's, taller than Bill, so let this stand for the height of Bill. It's got to be less than the height of John. Bill is taller than Melissa. So that's how the taller than relation works. It's what we call transitive. So in mathematics, if A is less than B and B is less than C, then obviously we know A is less than C if the quantities work out in that way. And the same is true here. If J is greater than height than B, and B is greater than the height of M, then it follows that J is greater than the height of M, and that's a valid conclusion in this case too. Okay. And perhaps one more example before I move on to further concepts of deduction. Cal State Fullerton, CSUF, is in California. And California is in the United States. So therefore, what follows? Fullerton's in California. California is a part of the US. So therefore, one more conclusion for me. Let me know. Yes, then California is in the United States. Okay, so if this is Cal State Fullerton, you already know it's a part of California. It's within California. California is one of the 50 states, so it's a subcategory or a subset of the United States. And obviously, therefore, Cal State Fullerton, being a part of something that's a part of this thing, is itself a part of the United States. Okay, so just valid arguments all around, everybody. That's what we've just learned about here a little bit. Now, the nice thing about a valid argument is this. If it's got the form of validity, then if the premises are given, the conclusion has to be true. You can never be led from true premises to a false conclusion if the argument is valid in form. So it's helpful when we reason because we always try to reason towards the truth. And valid arguments are what we call truth preserving because they never take us from true premises to a false conclusion. Now, the next thing I need to talk to you all about is the difference between a valid argument that is sound and a valid argument that is not sound. Okay, so there's a new term and a new concept for us to learn, and it's what is called soundness. And let me just put it on the board and in the chat, and then we'll give some examples of this. Okay, so sound. Sound. This is simply when a deductively valid argument has all true premises. All right. There you go, sound. When a deductively valid argument has all true premises. So a sound argument is a valid argument where all the premises are actually true, meaning that they all match the facts of reality. So the thing that now is a little weird, but I just want you to follow me on this. There can be valid arguments that are not sound, and then there can be valid arguments that are sound. So validity can happen even when some of the premises are false. That would be a valid but not sound argument. Okay, so let me try and show you some examples like that, but I'll type this in the chat first. Okay, sound. A valid argument has all true premises. Okay, so let's go ahead and explore this concept with some examples. Here I'm writing out this argument. So all men have walked on Mars. Let's say what's a good name of a person in the world that we know? You can help me with that. I forget what the previous example was, so just throw out another case if you want. Anybody's name, a human being in the world. Elon Musk. Okay, good. All men have walked on Mars. Elon Musk is a man. It's kind of funny that he actually does want to send people to Mars, but yes. So look, for the moment, disregard whether these things are true or false, but what would be the logical conclusion that would follow from those two statements? If all men have walked on Mars and Elon Musk is a man, the conclusion of the argument then says, therefore what? What follows from these two statements? Therefore, Elon Musk has walked on Mars. Yes. Okay, so very good. But question, what is the status of this argument? Is this argument valid? Let me know. Just yes or no, is it? Yes, valid, no? Okay, you're saying no. Some of you are saying no. But you're wrong. It's not the case that it's The answer is yes, it is valid. Okay, it's a valid argument. Let me try and explain to you why it's valid. Well, or actually, let me get into it a little differently to sort of work with your intuitions here. You're saying no because you see something wrong with the argument, that it's saying something false. That does not mean that it's invalid, though. This is valid. The right word, though, is that it's not what? Based on what we've just now learned. This is a valid argument, but it is not sound. Thank you, Newt. It's not sound because not all the premises are true. Okay, so it's still valid, though, because logically speaking, this conclusion does necessarily follow from these two premises. Okay, so set the real world aside for a moment and just think about graphs. All men have walked on Mars. Let's use the letter H for humans. Now, all of them have walked on Mars. Where's the circle representing M for things that have walked on Mars going to fall now? So if all men have walked on Mars, where will M go in connection with H? Because we have this circle H that stands for all the humans. They've all walked on Mars. So for M, which represents things that have walked on Mars, where will it be drawn on the board? All of the humans have walked on Mars. So where's M? Yes, correct. Again, it's around. Because if we say all humans have walked on Mars, then that's 100% of the humans that are contained within the set of things that have walked on Mars. Now, Elon Musk is a human. So where will EM go on the graph? Standing for Elon Musk. Where is he going to go? EM. I have to put it on the board. Inside of H. That's right. Because he's one of the humans. Now, looking at the graph, yes, it follows that Elon Musk has walked on Mars, because if all men have walked on Mars and Elon Musk is one of those men, all of whom have done so, then he has done so, because it does not say most men have walked on Mars or some, it says all. So if all of them have and he's one, then he's done it too. So it's a valid argument, but it is not sound. Okay, now it's not sound because not all the premises are true. Tell me, which premise is false? Which is the false premise that throws off soundness? There's only a couple options, so you can tell me straight away. There's clearly one of these sentences false. It is the first premise that says all men have walked on Mars. No, they haven't. In fact, not even one man has walked on Mars. So this is a valid argument, but it is not sound. It's not sound because of the falsehood of the first premise. So what's important for you to recognize right now is that you can still have a valid argument where some of the premises are false. In that case, you just have to look at whether or not the conclusion is a logical product or consequence of the information provided above. So for evaluating validity, you do not have to consider how the real world is at all. You just have to consider the logic of the statements internally to the argument. And in this case, this conclusion, just in terms of its information content, it does follow from these two things like a piece of mathematics. But it's not sound because we have a false statement here included within the premises. Now, if I make some edits to the argument, we can change what was a valid but unsound argument into one that is both valid and sound. So no men have walked on Mars. Elon Musk is a man, and therefore Elon Musk what? If in this version of the argument, what's the new conclusion? Just looking at the board. Therefore, Elon Musk has not walked on Mars. Good. Now, can you tell me the status of this argument? I think I maybe gave it away, but just to be clear, this one is terminology what? I've edited the argument to remove and change the first premise and the conclusion. Now, because I've done that, the argument goes and becomes a what kind of argument? It is sound, yes. Well, sound argument, Jorge, because you say sentence, but every argument has multiple sentences. So correct, the whole argument overall, containing 3 sentences, is valid and it is sound. It's valid because logically this conclusion follows from the premises, but in this instance, the premises are in fact true statements. Both of those are true. So this is valid and sound. Okay? So when you have a valid but not sound argument, there's going to be at least one premise in there that is false. Let's continue on the same theme. And then once I work this over with you just a little more, we will go into the topic of induction, okay? So, all dogs can fly. Golden Retriever is a dog. Let me say it with the indefinite article. A Golden Retriever is a dog. So what's the conclusion of this example? Just, practice makes perfect, repetition, hitting you with more and more of the same kind of examples, giving you different looks. That's what it's all about. So just trying another one. Let me know when you're ready. What would be the proper conclusion of this argument? All dogs can fly. Golden Retriever is a dog, and therefore a Golden Retriever can fly. Yes. So follow-up question, what's the status of this argument? It's blank. What kind of argument? Valid but not sound. Exactly. Thanks, Caitlin. Just remind me one more time why it's not sound. Why it's not sound? Because, simply stated, at least one premise is false, and you know that it's the first one which says dogs can fly, and of course dogs can't fly. Why is it valid? Can anybody say that? Correct. We got now the reason that it's not sound, and it's because dogs cannot fly. Yes, perfect. Other question, why is it valid? Why does it remain valid, though, despite its being unsound? I know it's a little bit of a trickier question, but it's something I think you can say if you just reason it out for a moment. It's valid. Why? Well, you say we can link Golden Retrievers to being dogs. Sort of, but that's not what the conclusion says. It doesn't just say they're dogs. It says they can fly. You say has premises in a conclusion. No, because there can be invalid arguments that have premises in a conclusion. So that's not sufficient for validity. You say, Darley, the conclusion can be drawn from both premises. Yes. But even more than that, Darley, not just that they can be drawn from the premises, but that it necessarily follows from the premises, okay? This statement has to be true if these two statements are true. It's if, then. So I want you to imagine a possible world where these two things are facts. In that possible world, this is a fact as well, and there's no way that it could not be, because the information stated here is that all dogs can fly. If they all can, then any particular type of dog can fly as well, including the Golden Retriever. So with validity, once again, you have to just evaluate whether the final conclusion is a logical implication of the premises that are given. And sometimes we can have an implied statement even when the things that it is drawn from are not all true. Now, you might be wondering then, well, if we could have a sound argument, why aren't they all sound? Instead of having these weird arguments that are valid but not sound, like all men are purple and Joe Biden is a man and therefore Joe Biden is purple. That's valid, but it's not sound. You might be wondering, what's up with these weird examples where we get into these bizarre falsehoods, but we're still constructing valid arguments? It's important for you to understand that those arguments remain valid despite their unsoundness. Because in everyday life, look, we are not omniscient gods. We ourselves don't always know what is true and false. So in many cases, the best we can do is to present an argument where formally it has the form of validity. And then we leave it to our opponents and critics to try and poke holes in our argument by questioning the truth of our premises. But as long as the argument is valid, then what you know is that if somebody gives you those premises, if they grant you those premises, then they have to give you the conclusion too, because they're a package deal. It's possible to have arguments that are valid but not sound when the reasoning is solid, but you have some false assumptions that you start off with. So in the best case scenario, sure, all of our arguments would be both valid and sound, but because we're not perfect as humans, and because we can sometimes have false assumptions in our mind, it's at least better to have a valid but not sound argument, because in that case, the logical reasoning is still correct, even if some of the assumptions built into it are false, okay? Now, Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to say. I'm not going to write it on the board, but just quickly. All men have 8 legs. Donald Trump is a man, therefore Donald Trump has 8 legs. What kind of argument is that? Just hearing me say it, if you follow me, you can tell me what kind of argument is that? All men have 8 legs. Premise 1. Donald Trump is a man. Premise 2. Therefore, Donald Trump has 8 legs. Conclusion. It's valid but not sound. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, how about this? All human beings have 2 parents. Dr. Vulich is a human being. Therefore, Dr. Vulich has 2 parents. What's the status in this case? All humans have 2 parents. Dr. Vulich is a human. Therefore, Dr. Vulich has 2 parents. What do you know? It's Darley, come on. Why are you thinking it's invalid? I just said that every human has 2 parents. Dr. Vulich is a human. And therefore, Dr. Vulich has 2 parents. It's valid and it is sound. Right, Darley, we clear on that? It is valid because the conclusion is a logical consequence of the premises, and both of the premises are true. Yes, every human being has 2 parents. We haven't cloned a human yet successfully, so if that ever happens, maybe there'll just be 1. But for the time being, we've only had those kind of naturally occurring, even in a test tube, there's 2 sets of gametes from 2 different people. So every human has 2 parents. I'm a human, therefore I have 2 parents. It's valid and it's sound because it's a logical inference that's necessary from the conclusion to the premises, but also the premises happen to be true in this case. Okay. All right, good. So next I told you that we're going to talk about the other type of logical reasoning and argument form, and that is induction. So I've been saving that for now. Induction is different than deduction. With induction, if all the premises are true, well, let me say this. When you have a good inductive argument, the term that we use is not valid, but rather strong. So there's deductively valid, and then on the side of induction, there's what's called inductively strong. Let me tell you what is an inductively strong argument, because that's what a good inductive argument is. So an inductively strong argument means this, that if all the premises are true, then the conclusion is highly likely to be true or probably true, but it's not necessarily so. Okay, so if all the premises are true, then the conclusion, and here's the only difference, then in that case, the conclusion is highly likely to be true. A high degree of probability, but not guaranteed. So instead of saying must be true, we're now to probably the conclusion is true, given those premises. So with inductively strong arguments, there's very good probability that that conclusion is true in case the premises are, but there's still some non-zero possibility that it could turn out false regardless. Let me give you one very classic, well, I'm going to type it in the chat first, so give me 2 seconds to do that. The definition here, so let me put it in there. Okay, there you see it. Inductively strong argument. If all of the premises are true, then the conclusion is highly likely to be true also. So this is like a classic example of an inductively strong argument. It's a textbook example that is often used. I'm just going to include one premise in this case, and here's what it says. The sun has come up every morning for billions of years. So So it says the sun has come up every morning for billions of years. Now, what kind of conclusion do you think could follow from that? That's very probable, highly likely. Since the sun has been coming up every morning for billions of years, a person might conclude, therefore, that what? What do you think? Conclusion now. Based on this premise, what do you think you could probably safely conclude from the premise? Not that, Daniela, because that would actually be more like deductive. If it's been coming up for a billion years, then it has to have existed. And so that would be necessarily true. But we're talking about probability here. And so, Joanna, you say it's going to continue to come up. I understand why you say that, but that conclusion is a little too open-ended into the future. Continue for how long? And same with you, Nadia, same problem. You're saying we'll continue to come up every morning. It's just too far out into the future. We need to make a specific prediction based on these premises. Jorge, it's the same problem with you. You say it comes up every morning. It has in the past, but what is going to happen next? Okay, good, Megan, that the sun will come up tomorrow, just one more day. One more day. That's all I'm trying to conclude here. The sun has come up every morning for billions of years, therefore the sun will come up tomorrow. Now, don't you think the sun probably will come up tomorrow? I'm sure you do. And why do you think that? Because of this reason, because it has been coming up every morning for how long? Not just once or twice or like, a week in a row, but for literally billions of years, for as long as the Earth has existed, it's been orbiting the sun, and therefore every morning reliably, you see the sun arise from the east and set in the west. So if it's been coming up every morning for billions of years, it's pretty reasonable to conclude that it will come up tomorrow. But is it an absolute guarantee that it's going to come up tomorrow? Can we say that that's necessarily going to happen? No, okay? It's possible, although highly unlikely, that this will be the last day the sun comes up, because maybe a passing asteroid or something that's massive will blow up the sun or the planet Earth. Or maybe this is the time that the sun will finally start to supernova, and then, the sun, like every other object in the universe, has a finite lifespan, even though it lasts for billions of years. So when the sun explodes, ultimately, there won't be any sun there to come up. So although it has been happening for billions of years, and although this is extremely, extremely likely, it's not a 100% probability, but like 99 point, whatever percent. So that's why this is inductively strong. It's an extremely probable conclusion given this premise, but it's not something that can be taken as an absolute certainty. There's some small, slight, non-zero possibility that the sun wouldn't come up tomorrow. So it's an inductive argument. Notice that with deduction, there's no room for the conclusion to be false if the premises are true. Like, so if I'm older than you, and you're older than, like your little brother or sister, then clearly I'm older than your little brother or sister. That's not something that we say probably, because if those two facts I had mentioned are true, then the conclusion I gave has to be true. If I'm taller than you and you're taller than Melissa, then I am necessarily taller than Melissa. It's not probabilistic. But in this case, we have a question about probability. This conclusion, highly probable given the premises, but not absolutely certain. Okay. Let's try another example. All US presidents for, what is it, like over, 200 years have been men, like male, All US presidents for over 200 years have been men. A person could maybe conclude from that the what? What do you think? Sort of following the pattern that, well, not that our president is a man right now, Sheridan, because that's not something that is a matter of argument. That's just a fact. It is that the next president would be a man, yes. Okay, now, the next US president will be a man. What is that based on in the argument? Well, it's based on the evidence that every president has been a man for the entire history of the United States. We haven't had a female president yet. But is it 100% certain that the next US president will be a man? Not really. It's not 100% certain. It seems like it's pretty probable given the track record of history. But it is not impossible for a qualified woman to take the presidency. Hillary Clinton was pretty close, and there's some other nominees out there that could possibly win in a future election. So although we've never had it happen yet, and that makes it seem pretty reasonable that it won't happen in the next instance, it's not something that can be given as complete certainty or necessary truth. So yet again, we have an inductive argument that's inductively strong. Now, how strong the inductive argument is depends on how extensive the evidence is that's supplied by the premises. How much evidence does it give that the conclusion is true? So there can also be inductively weak arguments, guys. Like, for example, what if I say to you this? Yesterday, while I was on a walk in my neighborhood, I found a $5 bill on the ground. So therefore, I will find a $5 bill on the ground today. Is that really that probable? No. The premise does not establish much likelihood in that conclusion. So that would not count as an inductively strong argument. That would be inductively weak. It's based on only one instance, and it's based on an instance that has no essential likelihood to repeat. If any of you guys know finding money on the ground, it's a quite rare occurrence. So if you find it once, it's probably random, and it's not likely to repeat with any regularity. If a student says like, oh, I wore my red socks and professor canceled class last Thursday. So if I wear my red socks this Thursday, he will cancel class again. It's looking for a pattern based on only one instance, and there's no kind of reliable connection between that happening again and the choice of socks. So with inductive arguments, you really have to look at the premises and see whether they provide like solid, reasonable support for the conclusion. Let's think of some other examples of inductively strong arguments. So I'm in my 30s, and to this point in my life, over 30 years of life, I've never been shot. So therefore, I believe that what? I will not get shot today. I would say that's probably pretty likely, because if it hasn't happened yet in over 30 years, then it seems like it's not the sort of thing that generally does happen with any frequency. But in a country like ours, you never know for 100% sure, do you, that that's going to be the result. So induction is when you predict that like the next instance of something that has already been observed over time will continue to occur in the same way. You know, the mailman comes every Monday through Friday for the past 20 years. Tomorrow is Wednesday, so the mailman will come tomorrow. That's something that seems highly probable given the past pattern and track record. But once again, it's not something that can be absolutely guaranteed, because there could be weird things happening that can destroy the planet, much less the postal system. So do you guys kind of get a feel for this inductive stuff? What is an inductively strong argument? Let me see if anybody here can try to construct one. Let me see some example, and then that'd be great. That'll be kind of one of the last things for today's meeting. Then we'll kind of move on from this. Well, we'll never move on completely, but we'll pick up on the same theme next time and continue from here. Can somebody present perhaps an inductively strong argument? So all you got to do is like the premises, in some cases, they'll refer to like a track record in the past, and then the conclusion is just that the thing will happen in the next observable instance. The format of an inductive argument is often a premise which says like such and such has happened n number of times, where n is like a large number. And then the conclusion is that such and such will happen the n plus 1th time. So in other words, the next time. But let me see what you have. We've talked about all the presidents been men, the sun coming up, haven't been shot. But let me see you come with something else on your side. Just anything at all. Something to evaluate. What do you say? So you got to make sure this conclusion is likely on account of the premises, given the premises. So go ahead. Just take a moment. I mean, it's not hard. You can tell me this, an inductive argument. Some conclusion that's likely, but not absolutely certain. What's something that's likely to happen? Just put it out there. Or likely to be true, whatever. Okay, Daniela, the runner has won every race they have taken part in, therefore they will win the next race. That's good. You know, when you talk about athletic performance and success, you can use induction there for sure. Like Taylor Swift has made good albums in the past, the next one will be good as well. Sure. I mean, if you view that she has had a bunch of good albums and she's released all this solid material over her career, then the next album you'd think would also be good. Of course, that's based on more controversial premises, because it's a matter of taste, isn't it, whether she's a good artist or not, but I take the point and it makes sense. The runner has won every race. I remember for a time in the 2010s, LeBron James was making the NBA Finals like every year, okay? So he made like 11, 12, 13, 14 with Miami Heat. And then he switched to the Cavs and it was 15, 16, 17, 18 with them. So that's 4 more. There's like 8 in a row consecutive NBA Finals. Say that you're like going into that 8th year and you had this argument. For the last 7 years, LeBron James has been in the NBA Finals. So he will make the NBA Finals this year as well. That's kind of like your example, Daniela, just to give a more real world kind of a presentation of it. McDonald's has been serving burgers for a multitude of years, thus McDonald's will serve burgers tomorrow. That's also fair and good. Notice this, guys, like I've said to you, that with induction, there's always some room that the conclusion could turn out otherwise, even if the pattern has been long established in the past. So even if the sun has come up for billions of years, there's that chance that it could blow up and not come up tomorrow. Even though I've never been shot in my whole life, there is that chance that today I get some bad luck on that account. We could talk about how every US president prior to Barack Obama was a white man, right? And so going into the 2008 election, you could have said, over 200 years of American history, every US president has been white, so therefore the next president will be white. But in that case, of course, the pattern was broken by a change to the typical past events. And so what it shows us is that induction is something we rely on. We have to rely on it. We have to base our expectations of the future on what we have experienced already in the past, but that's not always a bulletproof guarantee. We think of induction all the time, even when we're not really aware of it. When you get into your car and you turn the key, what do you think is going to happen? Or if you have one of those even nicer cars and you push the button, what do you think is going to happen? Let me know. It's just a question. I'm sure you know my answer, but just touching base with you. You're in the car, you're turning the key, whatever, and you would expect that what will happen next? That it's going to turn on, right? That the car will start. And why would you think that? Well, it's because even though you're not thinking about it actively, it's because you have this past experience. Maybe you've never gotten into your car and tried to ignite the ignition and it didn't start. So if it's never happened before, you don't think it's going to happen now. But of course, there's that possibility, unfortunate possibility, that this will be the day when you finally do have an engine failure, a mechanical problem that causes the car not to properly start. So if we didn't have induction, we'd be walking around all day like, what's going to happen next? I don't know. If I go out of my house, will the floor give out? If I take a walk, am I going to like fall on the ground? Like, we would not know what to expect if we couldn't base our predictions on the past and just generally rely on them. So induction, for the most part, is accurate and reliable. When we rely on good inductive, strong arguments, we get to the correct conclusions. But unlike deduction, these inductive conclusions cannot be 100% guaranteed. Okay, guys, so I think that's really all I wanted to say today about some more topics in logic. When we come back on Thursday, we will start to really get into the book material a little more, so make sure you read the pages listed for Thursday's meeting, and we will expand on deduction a little more on Thursday by talking about different forms of deductively valid argument. And so go ahead, read the pages in the text that are written in the syllabus for Thursday, and we'll just kind of smoothly go right into that meeting then. I'll also send you the video recording of this lecture later today, as well as the links that you need to attend the Thursday Zoom. And then, of course, after that, we'll be back to in-person, face-to-face next Tuesday. So are we all good, guys? Let me know. If so, feel free to just say goodbye or sign out, and then I'll close the stream once I see you saying goodbye. Okay, thanks, everybody. Have a great one. Hope your day goes well, and I'll be in touch. If you need anything, you can email me. Okay, then. See you soon. Bye-bye. Okay, thanks, guys.